All right, everyone, I am back with another market update. Today is May 22nd. It's been a little bit of time since the last market update. We've got some really good price action movement from our lows in the $70,000 range, $70,000 to $80,000 range, which is pretty exciting. That's kind of the last video I made was basically the reversal and hoping it goes up. Well, it's definitely gone up from about 73 ish to now all-time brand new highs of 111,000 something. So we're gonna dig into that. A little bit bigger before we jump into the charts. A little bit bigger of more of a macro play here that happened in the news is Moody's has downgraded the U.S. Credit basically, and this really just it more means that or rather, it most likely means that there will be interest rates cuts, probably sooner rather than later, and that will probably be positive impact on the markets, on the charts, basically across the board. The 30-year rate, 30-year Treasury yield is whatever it reached 5%. Maybe I'd have to go double check it, but pretty much what you got to know is really higher bond yields really just means that investors they want more return to be able to lend money. It's kind of a sign that they don't necessarily trust the government finances as much as they did. That's really the biggest thing. And really, in a debt-based economy, in order for the GDP to really outpace the debt that we have to print money to kind of force that. And so I think that what we're going to see this summer, and you're not seeing my charts yet, but I think what we're going to see this summer is probably a little bit of a push up in really any risk on assets. We might, we might see some safe haven money move, but definitely going to be interesting to see. And so today I'll kind of go over, obviously Bitcoin, Ethereum. We'll talk about Bitcoin dominance and that kind of stuff. But from a bigger picture, when you kind of zoom out and really look at where we stand, things are looking. It's funny because it's bullish, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's good news. But really, what it means is there's really a lot more liquidity that's sitting there, and it might mean that we need more liquidity to kind of push our economy over the hump and get a little bit more momentum. But really, it's just kicking the can down the road. But in the short term, when they print money, it goes into markets. If they do stimulus checks, it goes into the markets. And so all that capital will ultimately raise things up. And if they raise or lower interest rates, same thing. You can borrow money cheaper. If you could borrow money at 4%, 5%, and you can invest it and make 8%, many will do that. And so let's kind of jump in to that's not it. Ta-da. Okay, so we are back. Let's take a look at Bitcoin here. Definitely, when we kind of zoom out here, you can see our trend line. Really not much has changed. I've only added one line really to this whole thing in a long time. But basically, this was really kind of our CME gap area that I was hoping to fill, and it definitely filled. It punched through a couple times. And then this is where I kind of got some of my orders filled. But ultimately, we've reversed. And what I'm looking for right here is it needs to close and stay above the 1-day 50 EMA. And so if I kind of zoom in, I'll kind of show you here that obviously the purple line acts as kind of support and resistance. When it's above it, it typically stays on top of it until it loses it. Once it loses it, it needs to retest it a little bit. But this 50-day EMA, really we are able to get a close. In fact, the actual close was this one. Where we were hanging out here, all this consolidation right under. Now we've broken above it, we've closed above it, we've confirmed above it. This close is above all these, which is really what we want. And now we consolidated sideways above this, and so it continues to push up. As far as really what it looks like kind of in the future, we've got an interesting, if we take the tops here and we try to line it up, really this point right here and this point right here. What's kind of crazy is we're pushing right into that line. So this is the RSI, just means it's kind of showing you relative strength of the markets. The strength is pretty high, so typically it goes up and then it goes down and up, it goes up and goes down. But really the main things we look at are, at some point it's going to get extended enough from this purple line that it'll get extended enough it needs to come back down, or it needs to go sideways while the purple catches up. And I think that's what we're going to see. Even though we have all-time highs, this would be a pretty logical spot, really right around this 111,000, 112,000, probably a pretty logical spot for it to kind of top in the short term. And the question is, does it really ding dong through here in this little triangle or not? Obviously, our little white arrows here, you can kind of see it really did a really good job of kind of consistently, it hits it and it finally breaks above it, it comes back down, and then it pushes up. I personally think that if we look at the weekly chart too, you'll see that our 50 weekly EMA down here is what we retested, right? And if you consistently look at kind of going back, once it breaks above, it just stays here. It gets overextended. It comes back to it. It gets overextended. It comes back to it. And so I'm looking for another overextension and then obviously to kind of pull back on our way up. This would be a short-term minor resistance. And really, there's several things that could happen in this range. I don't think we're going to come down to the 80-something thousand. I do think there's a chance we could, if it sells off, I think we could see as low as the low 90s. And I'll explain that by just simply showing you the futures chart. We only had, I think, one gap left that hasn't been filled, and it's literally right in here at 91-ish to 92.5. And so that is a potential marker, but they don't have to get filled, right? There's just a high likelihood that they get filled. And so when we come back in here, really what I'm looking for is kind of twofold. I've been waiting for this to kind of get up to really this range, 110, 111, 112, 13, something like right in here. And we might push up a little. I've got an alert around, looks like 113,454, which means it's just random. But really over 113, I'm thinking it might sell or push up, and then it should sell off and kind of gain some resistance. If you kind of look at the tops of these candles that are just the wicks, where the bodies of the candles stop, it's around 105, 106,000. And I think what we might see is, I think we kind of see our leg up. And what I want to see is, I want to see consolidation right around here. That would give me a lot of positive encouragement that we're going to see another leg up. Specifically, if it goes sideways and consolidates above this 106,000, anywhere up here, from here and up, if it goes anywhere in here, that really is kind of showing that this is now acting as support. This whole area is acting as support. If it sells off below that area down to like 100,000, I think you do have a strong, 100,000 is just a nice round number, but also our 50-day EMA will probably catch up in a matter of a few days anyway. And that might be another stopping point. But I just don't know how likely it is we're going to see Bitcoin under $100,000 again in our life. But also definitely this year, right? It might sell off depending on how high we go. It might sell off below $100,000 in 2020, into 2026, the beginning of 2027, somewhere right around there. But really for right now, what I'm looking for is really just kind of some squigglies, really going sideways, and that's going to mean that we're probably going to be pushing up. You've heard me talk about flag patterns before. This is our big flag stick. Right here, it goes sideways to paint the flag. That's bullish. It goes up another leg. It goes sideways to paint the flag, and now we're working on our way of pushing up. And I think that we're going to see some solid, kind of going sideways. What's interesting, though, is this line consistently or continuously acts as some level of support and resistance, which is kind of cool. And we might reference it in the future. It might kind of go at a diagonal here and work our way down. It might continue to find support and resistance there, which is kind of interesting. This line right here is tracing things back to previous all-time highs. If you were to look at the 2021 double top, where this is kind of a misprint or a deviation of the trend. But if you were to map them out, where would it lead you? It hasn't acted as really strong support or resistance, but it definitely could. This white line is something I was playing around with these lows and these lows to see if we were to sell off really from up here, what that might look like, but it's pretty far away. And honestly, we don't really want it to go back down there. So that's kind of where we're at on Bitcoin specifically. I do think we're going to see another leg up. I think we should see the 120 to 130 range. Really wouldn't surprise me if we get another leg up. That's pretty exciting news. I could also see us just kind of slowly working our way up until we get a lot of interest in Bitcoin, which if you look at the Google trends for Bitcoin, they're just not really that busy. And I can make another video on that. But one thing that is notable that I want to go ahead and talk about with Bitcoin is the Bitcoin dominance specifically. And really with the dominance, again, this is all the money in crypto that is in Bitcoin specifically. And we've had just nothing but a giant run up for, since December 2024, basically. And remember, when this goes down, money is leaving Bitcoin. It typically goes to higher speculative assets such as altcoins and Ethereum and whatnot. And then when things are uncertain, it's going back into Bitcoin. And as you can see, this has been going up, up, up. I really kind of thought this was going to be the top based upon this big thing. We did end up filling this wick. But I don't know, with this being said, I don't know that this is going to be considered done. So you got strong Bitcoin and then it sold off, which means our alts did a little bit of a move, which is kind of nice, but it's immediately really moving back up. And so with that, when I look at this, that means things are getting very overextended. And what's kind of interesting is really when you look at the markets themselves, the Bitcoin market having more impact from institutional players, bigger players, we may not see really the retail crowd moving the markets as much as we saw in the past, which is fascinating. But that also could mean that our altcoin seasons are probably a little bit shorter. Definitely could be a little bit shorter. And with Bitcoin, we might not see these blow off tops, although I'm still a little hesitant to say that because I just think people are irrational. And when the price of Bitcoin goes up to whatever, 150,000 or 200,000, I think people are just going to start piling in because it'll be all over the news. And a lot of times too, literally even 111,000, it's an all new high. It'll be on the news tonight. People will see it and it'll probably cause a little bit more of a pump, which is just the way that it works. So when we look at dominance, there's not a lot of zones left to kind of consider. 64% of all the money in crypto is in Bitcoin right now. And in recent times, it got as high as 73%, as you can see over here. It definitely could. I kind of see really this low right here, and it's kind of a top right here, and then there's consolidation right in here. From about here, in fact, if I draw a little box, which might be of interest, if we kind of look at really these bottom levels right here to probably somewhere right around this section right here. So really what we have is just a lot of sideways chop in here, right? Lots of levels that kind of caused it to stop going up for a while. And what I think is going to happen is not only do we push into this, but if we're continuing to go up with Bitcoin, which could be interesting, not only do we push into the box, I think we push towards the top of the box, right? Where we see a lot of this happening and a lot of stopping right here. Well, that puts us about 70%. Really, other than that, I think it could wick up and kind of create a double top, but I'm going to say 70 is really more of a double top than 72.9 or 73.5. And so we could see Bitcoin really kind of aggressively, if I was to take this red box and make all this red, I'm just saying that all the money is going to Bitcoin. Eventually things are going to fold over. But this would help kind of drag everything up a little bit. And then if it was to sell off, it typically sells off sharply like this. And Bitcoin, what's crazy is literally Bitcoin could stay the same price. It may not change in price at all, but the money could simply be moving, and being offset. If you took 15% of all the money in Bitcoin and moved it into alts, it would really push the altcoins a lot because those market caps are so small compared to, what Bitcoin is, or what the total market cap is. You can literally see over here, you really can't see because of my screen. The total market cap is 3.5 trillion basically, and the Bitcoin market cap, which is this one, is 2.21 million. So pretty crazy. Literally taking a chunk of this, 15% of this, and moving it into the difference between these two, right? Obviously less than a trillion. Um, that's that's a lot. That's a lot of capital flowing in to a small market. So anyway, we will see. We are still on this upward trajectory, and the trend is your friend until the very end. So it will continue to go up until we fold over, and we really do see a little bit more of an alt season kind of happen. In the meantime, we'll just keep stacking them. So that's what's going on with Bitcoin. Really, the next thing that I think I want to make sure I'm talking about is Ethereum, and this is what's really fascinating to me as well. And with Ethereum, and I don't think I can view this logarithmically. With Ethereum, I've kind of hinted at this multiple times. So we got this downward sloping channel. It clearly just broke out, really broke above. Very similarly, needs to close above the 50-day EMA and watch the 50 EMA on the weekly as well. And so what do we see? We see that it comes down in this channel. It's getting super oversold in my opinion. I mean, look at this. This is all really oversold territory. And then it finally breaks out, really kind of consolidates, and then finally it just decides it's going to go above this 50-day and finally breaks out, and now it's consolidating above it on the daily. So if we go to weekly, what do we see? We see that we pretty much have a similar thing, downward trend. It's moving up, but it's a weekly average of 50 weeks. And so this would be our first close. If it ends this week in 3 days, this would be our first close above really the 50-week exponential moving average, and that would signal something quite bullish, which is very exciting. In previous videos, I've talked about the Ethereum and Bitcoin pair, and specifically what that looks like. This is just simply a way for me to move my Bitcoin into Ethereum, because Ethereum will eventually perform whenever it does, and when it does, I'll have more Bitcoin. And so we just started to get that move on the weekly. I had kind of talked about it really on the way down here. And this last few well, really not even that. It's pretty much these last couple, because they're on a weekly. It's literally just these last few ones that I've talked about, really trying to accumulate more Ethereum from Bitcoin. And then obviously when it pushes up, I'll have, I could sell that and then turn around and have more Bitcoin. But more importantly, Ethereum will be really, I think, the first mover in the altcoin market. And so when Ethereum Bitcoin starts to pump, that's a great sign for any other altcoins that you have, really whatever they are. And so that's kind of my, really my 2 cents actually, for today and what we've got going on with the, the update. It's exciting times. If we go back and look at my bigger picture, somewhere around here, not this one, not this one. Is it this one? No. Here we go. My bad. So obviously, if we go to kind of weekly, you've seen this before, but really just my bigger time frame. Again, what our cycles do, how they perform, roughly how long they are. It's all very exciting stuff. But now we're in this green box area. We really want to see what happens kind of later this year. So if we start to zoom in a little bit here, we can see that we're getting close. So on a weekly basis, boy, this is going to be the blink of an eye. And as we get closer, probably starting in about August, we're going to start talking about really where this is most likely to stop, and maybe even what price point it's most likely to stop in. When you look at the boxes, what's kind of crazy about them is this one goes all the way up to about 330. These go up to 480, pretty much 480,000, which is absolutely incredible. But could it happen? Of course it could happen. Totally could happen. We just don't know if it's going to happen. I've done the math on this and before, and I think that 180,000 is kind of my It's my bearish target. I think, or maybe it's my base target. I'd have to go double check, but I think we're going to end up over 180,000. We'll talk about how to scale out and stuff, but we've got a really solid trend going. That will continue for a while, and then it should be a little bit parabolic. We should see one of these or two of these, kind of some of this. So we will see. We're getting close to where the summer could spark some fun activity. And go from there. But for right now, we just keep hanging on. We keep watching to see what things look like. And realistically, you want to start thinking in your head, where does the Bitcoin price go that makes me say that helps me reach my goals, whatever that is. Let's not get greedy. Let's start to plan ahead and say, if Bitcoin was to hit 200,000, that solves a lot of problems for me right now. And so if it hits 200,000, I'm cashing out and I'm going to solve my problems. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to go on this vacation. I'm going to pay my property taxes, right? Whatever it is. And now you have a solid plan. And what we could do is, as we get closer, we can start to analyze the rate at which it's appreciating, and we can start to assign some probabilities to it that will allow us to say it's probably not going to make it to 200 grand. What I need to do is plan for 200, but start selling along the way. So maybe at 150, 100, whatever, just say 150, 60, 70, 80, 90, 200. That's literally 6 parts. I'm going to go ahead and take my Bitcoin, split it up into 6 parts, and I'll just sell a sixth on the way up. And that way I am exiting as it is kind of going up. And at 200,000, I'm all the way out, which is great. And that sounds like that in that case would probably make my average around 175. But you are out. And in the case that you're wrong, you've already taken profits on the way up, and you can cash out on the way down. Even if it goes back down to 150, like, you'd rather just get out if you're going to get out this cycle. Otherwise, you're going to round trip for the next 4 years, which is a very common theme. Is the greed gets to people and they say, oh, it's at this, I think it's going to go, up even higher. I was one who really didn't have my thesis nailed down in 2021. I thought I did, actually. I have a lot of research behind it. But I've learned that I was wrong in my modeling in several different, kind of areas. And looking at 2021, I didn't give enough weight to the fact that the first really pump in 2021 before it made that second high, that was primarily driven by the money printing and just the excess liquidity in the markets going in. And I didn't think about them wanting to take profits in a bull year. I don't know that I pieced that together. I thought they're going to hold their positions most likely. So it was quite an education, and I'm sure I'll get an education this year too, this cycle too. But things are shaping up to be a little bit more like, looks like 2017, right? We have a little bit more stability. We have bigger players involved, and that could be a big mover. So we'll see where it goes. If you have any questions, feel free to comment on the video, and we'll go from there. Share this with friends if you think they need it, and we'll keep things going. Have a great day.